Believe that we're going to get rolling here. I do believe we are. I don't have it. Oh, there's my gavel.
Maybe we need a gavel muffler.
I'll go to Carline Cardinal Muffler.
A little gavel cozy.
Okay, welcome everybody to the May 18th Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee. We'll start with a roll call. Mr. Clerk, sir.
Thank you. Councillor Palladino is absent. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Here.
Councillor Carlson.
Yep.
Councillor Campbell.
Present.
Online, we have Mayor Higgin has joined us. Also with us is Councillor Croson and Councillor Milton Hope. Thank you.
I will do the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also the home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We'll have the adoption of the agenda from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Be it resolved that the agenda of the regular meeting of the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee on May 18th be adopted as prepared. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Mr. City Clerk, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No.
I will call the vote.
Vote's been called. All in favor? That passes. Consent agenda. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee held on April 20th, 23 be approved, and the Chair and City Clerk designate be authorized to sign the same, and further be it resolved that the status of initiatives for May 18th, 2023 be received as information. Councillor Carlson on this one.
I trust everyone's reviewed it. Any questions, comments?
I see none.
I will call for the vote.
Vote's been called. All in favor? Passed. Let's go with presentations. You're just in time. All right. Michelle Day. Miles. I'm sorry, Michelle Day Miles. Yeah. You'll need to change your name to kilometers, right? Okay.
Oki, konnichiwa, hello. Thank you for your time today. I'm Dawn Sugimoto, the newly named president of the Lethbridge and District Japanese Garden Society. And I'm joined by our amazing executive director, Michelle Day Miles. On behalf of the board, I want to thank the City of Lethbridge for its long-standing partnership and investment in the special place that is Nikayuko Japanese Garden. I believe we demonstrate responsible stewardship for the public funding we receive for the benefit of city-owned assets, tourism, and the regional economy. The board recently has done a strategic planning process that's led to a mission and vision for our work, and we've established 3 areas of impact: education, collaboration, and destination. And now Michelle and her team are working on how those 3 areas of impact will be demonstrated in our regular work day to day, and what metrics her team will use to measure the outcomes we're trying to achieve. We believe this work will dovetail well with the master plan, and we're looking forward to seeing that plan come to fruition. And I want to thank Michelle and her team for their outstanding work, the highlights of which she'll share with you now.
Thanks. Next slide. So I'm here to update you on our 2022 year and the success of our last Winter Light Festival. As you can see, the story is going to be that we are now coming back from COVID. We lost 40% of our visitors during that COVID situation in 2020, but now we're back, and with the Bunka Center there, we are happy to announce that we have like 14% overall increase of visitation. You can see that we're starting to also increase and get back to where we are with bookings. We're not quite there yet. One of our focuses is on school tours because, again, schools had challenges with doing school tours throughout the COVID. Next. I want to do a big shout out to our annual volunteers and especially the board. The reason why there's so many hours there, I think we can all recognize the hours that put in for the new Bunka Center, the opening, and the Golden Maple reception. You'll see a decrease with the Winter Light Festival volunteers simply because it was minus 52 degrees in Lethbridge and volunteers are not excited to be outside. Next. We've increased our social awareness and engagement with our community. So as you can see, we're using all means possible to communicate with our community and the tourism industry. Next one. So now our financial story. With this, I just want to highlight that under the 28% gate, that includes our programming and experience revenue. But the highlight here is, again, that fee-for-service is 33% of our overall revenue, whereas you'll see the highest expenditure is the 60% of salary and wages. And I can't thank my staff on my team that are there, because it's them that are developing the experiences and conducting them. Next. You'll see an overall over the years how the fee-for-service is in relation to our expenditure. Next. Which is exciting to showcase and to be able to tell that we are doing our best to leverage our fee-for-service funding. I think for every dollar that we get from the city, we are going out with grants and donations, our programming, our experiences, and we're at a $2.08 per city dollar. So that's a huge achievement. Next slide. And our focus in this year with the new building, with knowing that we need to always look for opportunity, is fundraising, content development, and our shoulder seasons. And the shoulder seasons are key there because we need to also recognize that we're always going to have slow months in March, April, October, November, because the garden is actually closed to the public during that time. So we can't expect high revenues in those shoulder season areas. Next slide. And finally, the Winter Light Festival update. We had a 32% increase. Next slide. And why we had such an amazing increase is because of the Bunka Center. We are now got door counters, so we're following our other attractions on trying to understand who is coming into the Bunka Center for usage. So 11,000 people used our Bunka Center for non-paid programs and bathrooms around Henderson Lake. So that is something that we wanted to achieve, is to be a service for the Henderson Lake area, and it's coming true. Next slide. Another thing that we're doing to try to get revenue is create revenue generating spaces. So we have the new Travel Alberta Kamakura Dome. Travel Alberta gave us $100,000 for this project. So we're looking at increasing that use, looking at content development, and also moving forward with the dome. It will always be a temporary experience for maybe 3 to 5 years, but it does enhance the experience of our visitors. Next slide. Last but not least, we did a public survey for our winter lights in 2021. This is the outcome of our 2023, and to have 358 people answer your survey, we were overwhelmed and proud of the city and our residents' engagement with that survey, and you can see some of the results there. 91 being that we were 4 to 5 star rating. So people are enjoying the Winter Light Festival. Next slide. And again, collaboration is key through the winter months to provide a winter activity for our residents. Next slide. We also want to continue that education piece. What do the Japanese and our southern Alberta people like to celebrate in the winter months? Next slide. But the destination piece, because I get asked a lot, we are a destination because 21% of our online tickets were from outside of southern Alberta. So we are bringing revenue into our community. And we wanted to see how much, and I want to highlight Calgary, from 3 to 30% that attended this Winter Light Festival. So that is incredible. Next slide. And here's the ticket breakdown. Happy to have Dallas, Texas here. We're happy to have all these places come to Lethbridge and come visit our Winter Light Festival. Next slide. And so I've worked with Tourism Lethbridge to say, what is that impact for our community for the Winter Light Festival? I thank Erin Crane and her team to assist me with this. So we're looking at an $800,000 impact to our community. Next slide. So I want to thank the community. I want to thank the staff, the board for working with us for the Winter Light Festival and for our 2022 season. And this is our first time that we've presented after our AGM to update the council, so we're happy to be here.
Thank you. Not to be a downer on this, but I do know it's in the community. I'd like to, and if I may ask this question, because and you're well aware of there are people who are saying we're doing too much to the garden. You're damaging the trees and the intent of what the Japanese gardens is all about, tranquility and peace and all that sort of environment, and that some people are worried that we are damaging what the intent of the Japanese gardens were. So I know it's a matter of working together, figuring out what is too much or what is not enough, or what is the the intent of the gardens. So can you give me a little sense of where we're at with that?
Sure. One of the things and one of the major philosophies of Japanese gardens is, does it reflect the community that nurtures it? And we take our community, our board, our committee's direction on how do we operate and program the garden. And that's key. The second part is finding the balance of programming and engagement while also creating spaces for peace and serenity. And that balance is there. The third is, I want to reassure the public that all of our public experiences and our programs do not touch the horticultural pieces except for the Winter Light Festival of hanging and taking down the lights. So when we have an increase of people coming into our garden, they are directed on asphalt. They are now have a new Bunka Center to do the programming in, because that's the Bunka Center is taking some of that use that was used to be done in the pavilion into the Bunka Center. So I think that the board, the society, our committees, our volunteers are always having the garden forefront and front and center when we're looking at programs and development.
Is there concern amongst people who work on the gardens, seeing when they are working on them, and is there potential damage to the trees with the amount of lights that go up? I've heard that in the community. That's all. I just want to hear your thought on that.
Well, I think there's two pieces to that. I think one, I believe that the city staff that hang and take down and take care of the gardens do it respectfully, and they do it very well. I think the second piece to that, which the city and the society are working on, is a master plan of the garden. There has been no research of the horticultural current condition ever done on the garden. So I think this master plan is going to come out, and it's going to discuss because it's a living thing. The garden is a living thing. So what is the current condition of the garden? And how do we preserve it into the future and maintain that authentic design and best practices for the horticultural pieces? So I think that is a very special report, the master plan that Don was highlighting, and I think that is going to address some of those concerns.
When can we expect that report?
I'm going to refer that back to city. I'm thinking June, July, but I could be wrong. September.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for the presentation and information. Congratulations, Madam President. We were actually, the three of us on the committee were actually at the AGM, so there probably won't be a whole lot of questions because they were all discussed there. I will have one question. I see Ms. Crane is in the audience today. She might want to help out as well. It's around the economic impact numbers, and I'm just wondering how those are calculated. Is that direct impact? Is it extrapolated for every dollar spent, et cetera? I'm used to the STEAM model that I hold in very low esteem because no one can ever explain it to me. So I'm just wondering if we can figure that, or help me figure that out.
You bet. Thank you for that question. This is a very simplified model. It is not the STEAM, and we did share this when we met with Carly Kleisinger, who is the director. This is at the starting points within Tourism Lethbridge. We have an Excel spreadsheet where we track events in the community. It's very simple. It's when does your event start? when does your event end? How many days is that? And then we take that, the number of days, times the number of out-of-town visitors. And that was provided to us by the Nika Yuko team. And many of you will remember that we have been working off of an economic multiplier that was created in 2012. We estimate that for every sporting event that happens in the city, there's $125 worth of economic impact for every person that comes and stays from outside of the community here in the community. So basically what we do is we take the number of days that happens times the number of out-of-town visitors times that economic multiplier. For sports, it's $125. For events, very similar to Nika Yuko Japanese Garden and the Winter Lights Festival, it's $200. And for meeting events and business events, it's $350. And that was calculated for us by Meeting Professional International and the what is now called Meetings Mean Business Canada, and then was crafted for us by Travel Alberta. So we have been using that since 2012. And again, it's a very simplified model looking specifically at direct impact. No indirect impact is included in there. No induced economic impact is included in that. And so when we reported back to you all on that 57 million that comes in, that was the spreadsheet that we were using, right? There are some new numbers that come into that from the STEAM model that we use for some of the sporting events. But most of it, I would say about 80% of it, was just that simple calculation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Simple is easy for me, or better for me to understand. Just a random question. Blairmore, Maryland. How come we got so many? I've never even heard of Blairmore, Maryland, so I'm just wondering why.
32%
I know.
I mean, tourism tracking people has just been an amazing journey to learn on different ways that we can follow a credit card. And our online ticketing system is one of those tools that we have to follow that. So
Very intriguing to me. Thank you.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, and thank you both very much for joining us today. And I certainly appreciated the presentation and overview of everything, including your financial statements at the AGM. So thank you very much for that. Taking a look through all of this, and I did take a read through all the survey questions because that's sort of what kind of person I am, and I obviously need a hobby. Taking a look through all of those, tell me about some of the lessons you think you've learned over this past year. Like you said, you're in full recovery from COVID. What are some of the lessons you've learned over this past year that you'll be able to carry forward as you move on?
when we first opened up the Winter Light Festival, it was a different experience in the sense where we just had that one visitor center. And it was overwhelming mass of people in a short period of time. And so one of the things that happened during COVID was the team quickly said, we need to ensure that we space out the people. And it goes back again to the care of the garden. So what we've done for the last 2 years successfully is said, okay, we're going to have a maximum amount of people in the garden at one time. And so we're looking at around 250 people per half an hour to an hour. So we've learned that it's great for the team and it's also great for the experience, so they're not completely overwhelmed by other people and they can enjoy the garden. The second thing is working with the City of Lethbridge team, we created a moon bridge ramp so people could go over that moon bridge. One of the biggest complaints we had was the bottleneck at the bell. So that was a success collaboration that people really enjoyed, going over that moon bridge to be able to go to the Mount Fuji. The other thing that we're really happy with is trying to enhance the experiences and the collaborations within the community and how we work with them over the winter months. Before, it was just about access to the garden, give people access to the garden in the winter lights. But now people want more than access, they want that engagement. So it's about creating those programs and those events through the winter, like anime movie nights and language classes, to really be able to enhance people's experiences when they come to Nikiuko. But timed entry, going over the Moon Bridge, that was two things that we've implemented that have been favorable. And ticket systems. Now I've been through 3 ticket systems, so we've learned a lot about the ticketing system. But now I feel that we've got things in place there that will be consistent moving forward.
And what new things do we have to look forward this year that you're thinking about?
Well, now that we've done the survey, we've taken that survey back to the board, and right now we're in conversations with the city on what does the Winter Light Festival look like moving forward. So I don't have too many updates for that today.
Okay, thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation, Michelle. I absolutely love going to the Winter Lights, and I do go during the summer as well. Although my 2 questions have actually been asked, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper in them, if you don't mind. Councillor Carlson asked you in regard, or actually Councillor Campbell asked you in regards to the trees and the putting up of the lights and so forth. I'd been led to understand that either an arborist or a horticulturalist assisted in both the installation and the removal of the lights. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Sure that they're not damaged, obviously.
So we rely on the City of Lethbridge team to look after the horticultural pieces, and my team hangs the structural, so anything not plant material. So as for their qualifications of their team leads, I'll have to refer you back to them. But they are there, the foreman's been there for many years, and he works with Rec and Culture Department, and so we have those ongoing conversations as lights go up and take down, how we work together with that.
And it being an asset, it meaning all the trees, clearly you're very sensitive to any potential damage to those assets.
Correct.
Okay. Second question, in terms of lessons learned, and I too am a bit of a wonk when it comes to reading surveys, and it is my experience as well, there is criticism in the survey in regards to the dome. All right, so in terms of lessons learned, what did we learn about the dome and what we might do differently next year?
So for the dome, there's 2 pieces to that. One, we didn't know which age group it would really resonate with, so we did learn that this is more of an adult, teenage adult experience, because little kids were kind of getting a little bit restless, so we learned that. So our programming, for example, like date night, was a huge success. So that is adults and teenagers. The second thing is enhancing the program inside the dome, and that's where my team is taking those comments back and readjusting, as well as providing different content, because this year we only had the cherry blossoms and we had the Northern Lights. So now we're looking at different content that we could showcase in the dome with our community arts and media groups.
Good. Just wanted to make sure. I mean, this was clearly identified in your survey. It was my own experience as well, and clearly you're doing something about it. Good. Thank you.
Councillor Croson.
We were laughing about this question earlier because you know I ask it of everybody and you said you're prepared, but I'm going to ask it anyways. With your entire operation, is there anything that keeps you up at night? Any big worries that we should know about?
I think we've actually had a healthy discussion about everybody's worries, and it's about maintaining and preserving the garden. And I think through this master plan, that is a great first step to look at the current condition of the asset, but how are we going to preserve that in the future? So I look forward to having that discussion, because I think people realize that it is a living asset. So there are going to be pieces of it that are going to need to be replaced that may be not in the top condition that it should be, keeping in mind that the garden is 57 years old. So it does need to, people need to work with us to ensure that that design keeps authentic to what it was created and how it was created by Dr. Sugimoto. That is the most important thing, because what the garden symbolizes in our community is huge. We were discussing that the Nikkei Memory Capture Project, those of Japanese ancestry who are now sharing those stories and have decided to share their stories through Nikki-Yuko Japanese Garden, has been so impactful this last 4 years, working with those of Japanese ancestry in our community to know about the racism, discrimination, but also seeing the beauty that the garden brings and how through diversity, inclusion, and equity, that something beautiful can come out of some dark history. And the garden symbolizes that. And I think they go together. I don't think you can't have the garden and share the stories just out in a vacuum. I think that it's connected. So the preservation and the maintenance of the garden is very important.
To be honest, it's quite a change. Not the garden itself, not the plants, but the fact when it was created quite deliberately as Japan, Canada. Let's ignore what we did 20 years before building the garden. We'll just skip over that whole part, right? And today you're actually taking on those stories that were purposely ignored because they thought it was too raw, too new in the 60s to actually deal with. So that is a dramatic shift, and a shift I personally am very thankful that you're taking on, because it was it was there, but not really discussed in Lethbridge for much longer than it should have been. So thank you for that.
And I want to thank council for their support of the new building to give us a space to be able to share those stories. So I thank council for their support.
Just totally off, how did it go this past weekend with sharing those stories? I know there was an event, right?
Yeah, we had Dr. Darren Aoki, Dr. Carly Adams, Dr. Gideon Fujiwara joined. We had about 50 people of Japanese ancestry gather at Nikki-Yuko. The Memory Capture Project, which is part of Plymouth University, the University of Lethbridge, the Nikkei Memory Capture Project, they have now captured over 100 stories of those of Japanese ancestry and what they've been through in the past, but also things that are not just about internment, pre-war, post-war, but relationships, and the relationships that they had with each other, as well as intimately being known as the Japanese, or the have a high level of marrying outside their Japanese ancestry. There were tears, but there was also community. And I'm not gonna cry, but it was a beautiful but yet awakening moment to actually hear the stories from the people themselves. And they will be archived forever, so hopefully we can learn from them.
Will that be shared with the public at some point, like a special event, or?
Yes, actually you can go online to the Nikkei Memory Capture Project. They have all 101 stories that they've captured online. And at Nikki-Yuko, we have a memory capture booth in connection with the timeline, and you can sit and actually see some of the videos with their voices and stories there as well. So we're going to build onto that.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Any other questions? I see none. So I thank you for your presentation on this part. I have a resolution from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee received the Nikki-Yuko Annual General Meeting and Winterlight reports and presentation as information. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you very much, Ms. Day and Ms. Sugimoto, for coming forward with the update. We certainly appreciate the regular updates from Nikki-Yuko to council, and we appreciate the work that you are doing. Let's look forward to a successful spring and summer season. With that, I will ask for my colleagues. If there are no questions from my colleagues, I will ask for their support.
No questions. Questions been called. All in favor?
Thank you very much.
On to 5.2, Dr. Gideon Fujiwara, Director, Lethbridge and District Japanese Garden Society. Please step forward. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, konnichiwa. Thank you for your time. It's my honor to represent the Lethbridge and District Japanese Garden Society. So I would like to, or we would like to make a recommendation we would like to recommend the following action: that City Council approves the renaming of the Visitor Center to be named the Yanoshita Center, and to rename the pavilion located in the garden to be named the Kumakura Pavilion. Next, please. So, as you're aware, the Nikkayuko Japanese Garden New Center had the official name of Nikkayuko Japanese Garden Bunka Center, approved by Council on April 15th, 2021. And in that presentation, the board highlighted some options for names for these two other buildings. And the Society Board and the new building committee at the time wanted to recognize the fact that the visitor center was being repurposed. As you know, ticketing and offices were moved to the Bunka Center, and currently it's being used as an office, but also as storage space. As for the next slide, please. As for the pavilion, we think that it would also be appropriate to rename as the Kumakura Pavilion. And by doing so, we're recognizing the special relationship we have with the Kumakura Company and the Kumakura family, who built the pavilion and numerous structures within the garden. And further clarifying that this pavilion is not a tea house. Next slide, please. So, as the slides show, we have a special relationship with this Kumakura Company from the 1960s who built many of these structures. Next, please. And since the 1960s, through the decades, the company has helped develop the garden, and most recently with the 50th anniversary of the garden, helped us prepare for those celebrations. A representative from the company, Ms. Kyoko Hayashi, visited the garden in the city, and currently the Kumakura Company is working with the board or with the society, with Executive Director Michelle Day Miles, and the city to develop the current plan. Sorry, the word is escaping me here. The master plan. Excuse me. Next slide, please. So the visitor center again. We feel this is a good way to honor Mr. Naoyoshi Alex Yanoshita. The notes of his remarkable life are in the package there. Next slide, please. But Mr. Yanoshita, born in BC, family was very successful with the large berry farm, but with the outbreak of war following Pearl Harbor, the Yanoshita family was forcibly evacuated to southern Alberta. And during that time, Mr. Robert Roeder actually accepted Mr. Yanoshita and other Japanese Canadians to work for his canning factory. And that was his start. When the family, following the Canadian government's mandate to relocate east of the Rockies, and they ended up in Ontario, he would go on to work there. But throughout his life, Mr. Yanoshita, having experienced discrimination and racism, he advocated for equality and justice for his community. And in the year 2015, the Yanoshita Family Foundation made a significant donation to the garden. And this was a key step in the building of the Bunka Center. And so, as we heard, the Bunka Center is sharing Japanese culture, but also telling the stories of this community. And so we think it's very appropriate that Mr. Yanoshita would be honored through the renaming of the visitor center. So the renaming of the two important buildings is a recommendation from the society. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. First thing I want to talk about, if I may, from Ms. Kleisinger, about, because we're currently undergoing or in the middle of a policy of renaming or naming buildings that are owned by the city. Can we just talk about where we're at with that and at what point we're at? Or whoever, Mr. Robin, yes, okay.
Right, that's
Sorry.
correct.
Mr. Harper, sorry.
Councillor Campbell, that policy that was brought forward to council and approved from a sponsorship perspective is currently being implemented. It includes renaming of existing city facilities. So, I mean, it would be probably a good idea to work within that policy since council just approved it.
Okay, so as you look at what is being proposed here today, are we a little bit premature to go ahead with approving those names?
I would advise that we work within that council-approved policy. One other comment I would make that it is very rare to rename a facility or name a facility after a company that was contracted to build a facility without further consideration for sponsorship. It may have occurred in other places, but it is very rare to do that.
Thank you. I have some questions. Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was sort of my line of questioning, but mine was kind of the opposite. My question was going to be, why would the city want to get involved? Same question I had when Bunka Center came forward, that council needed to approve. When I reviewed our sponsorship naming program that came forward earlier this year, I was very pleased that it was sort of hands-off our fee-for-service groups. But now I'm getting the sense that we want our hands back on. So I'm just, why would we be involved in this? Is it for city risk? That is the only reason I can think of, because I know can't recall in our community, but in other communities they have named facilities after people, and there's been some risk attached to that. It's why I have zero issue with Bunka, because I believe it means culture, and so it's hard to take issue with culture. But as we know, political especially, or individuals do come with occasional baggage. So is that the reason? I'm just not sure why we would get involved in this.
I think one of the other reasons that SPC could consider is that we've made a concerted effort in this community to go after naming sponsors, and this could have set a precedent as well. So Mr. Gallucci is going to be going forward with a very comprehensive strategy, and this being outside of that, well, we wouldn't necessarily need to get involved. It could set a precedent.
I guess I'm a little, I'm just still struggling with if we follow our sponsorship naming and all of a sudden Pepsi Cola, or I'll make up, some company says, we want to name that. We'll give you $1 million to call it the Pepsi Cola Gardens. I'm going to vote against that. So I'm just not sure why we're insinuating ourselves, but that may also just be a philosophical question I need to ask myself. Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Carlson, if I can just respond to that. I don't think we're suggesting that this might not be the outcome at the end of the day, but I think what we're suggesting is that we take a measured approach and work within the policy, and at the end of the day, we may determine that, yeah, this is the right thing to do. And you're correct. I mean, it is also very rare to name facilities after people who are still alive, even, because there is that risk that you mentioned. So there are some some concerns around this, I guess. Concerns might not be the right word, but some underlying issues that make this one a little bit different, I think.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much. I also wonder, because we do have a municipal names committee, and that operates under bylaw 6049. And part of that committee is, the work of that is shall name roads, open space, parks, and facilities not named through a public process or corporate sponsorship process. And I wonder if Nikki Yuko should be working with that committee as well as the sponsorship group to get council some information on naming the space. I just look at the work that that committee is supposed to be doing as well, and for us to go ahead and approve this, we've ignored what that committee's job is as well. So, I mean, if somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, we do have that committee in place, and should we not be working through that process too? Thank you, Ms. Gehring.
Sorry, different place for me to be. Very unusual to be over here.
Nice to see you on this side.
Yes, a little bit different.
It's a nicer side, right? Yeah.
So yes, bylaw 6049 does establish the municipal name committee. One of the things that this particular bylaw doesn't address is renaming. So the staff group that is on this committee has been working with staff in Rec and Culture, Transportation, to address how we do renaming. So it's quite common for us to rename a road. We have a process for that. There's address changes that need to happen. But in terms of a public building, that is something that this particular bylaw is a little bit silent on in terms of renaming. So, but we are in the process of working closely, both with Mr. Gallucci in terms of sponsorship and Rec and Culture, just to see how this bylaw may be updated.
Okay, so then my request to Nikki Yuko then is if you could be a little bit patient with us so that we can work through that process as well and make sure that all of that is lined up and aligned together. Thanks, Ms. Gehring.
Of course, we'll be patient and work through that process. One of the things I just do want to highlight, just for transparency, is part of one of our learnings is we can't put signage that is the visitor center there, because people will pass the Bunka Center and try to get into the visitor center for ticketing, and it's causing mass confusion. So I have worked with Rec and Culture to say, please just understand we are going to put the signage up to help with directing traffic, because one of the surveys where like we don't have enough signage. Yeah. So as long as that's okay.
Okay, yeah, and I would hope that Rec and Culture would be okay with that wayfinding signage, because that's just good practice everywhere, right? Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for your patience, and thank you for Ms. Gehring and everyone for answering that question for me.
Any other questions? I see none. I think I will recommend that with this resolution that we, the Japanese Garden Society and administration work together and review this. So I will, first off, Mr. Carlson.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. What is the timeline for that process? Just curious.
Timeline?
Are we talking a week, a month, 3 years?
Through the chair to Councillor Carlson, one of the other things that are in play here too is the master plan, and we're scheduled to have that back in September. It'll take us a little bit of time to review that. I'm not sure if it will have any impact or suggestions or recommendations on naming of buildings, et cetera, but we'd like to have that in the consideration as well. We're thinking Q4 of this year, we should be able to come back with information.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, through you to presenters. Is that an issue at all? That's 7 months out? If what I'm hearing, 5, 6, 7 months out?
I think it's fine with the understanding that right now we do have signage up. The Kumakura company is coming, so it would be a nice homage to know that we pay tribute to them, but we will also make it known that it's not official, but it's just a sign of respect for their visit.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? I'll present this resolution. Be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee refer this matter to administration to review in coordination with the sponsorship policy and the ongoing work related to a review of naming policies and processes, with a report back to the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee after the completion of the Japanese Garden Master Plan by the end of Q4 2023. And while the renaming, it sounds very apropos for those names, but I do think we have to follow the process at this time, and I apologize that we're going to may be a little later than we would like, but I think that is the way we should go. Any other comments, debates, questions? All right, with that, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation.
Thanks very much.
Up next, Donna Kozlovi, CEO, Green Acres Foundation, about the Green Acres Foundation 2022 report on the community. Ms. Kozlovi, thank you for being here.
And Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'll insert myself a bit into the process. Wearing two hats. Actually, I won't wear hats. I'm wearing the City of Lethbridge jacket, so I'll put on my Green Acres jacket for right now. There we go. There.
Do you need a quick change assistant?
And Mr. Chair, I am pleased to introduce Ms. Kozlovi today as one of Council's appointees to the Green Acres Foundation Board, as well as the this year's chair of Green Acres Foundation. Ms. Kozlovi is our CEO. She's got all the answers. I always tell everyone I'm here for the looks, but you know that's a lie. The report was submitted to members of council. Donna, or Ms. Kozlovi, I believe, has brought hard copies. Just quick question, has everyone got a copy, or does anyone need a copy? I think we're good, thank you. The report to community was provided in advance. I'm not going to read it through word for word. Obviously, you've all looked at it. I just want to say that on behalf of the Board of Directors, we're very pleased to be able to present to Council one of our 7 municipal partners in the Green Acres Foundation. And we've put an emphasis on creating partnerships, strengthening partnerships, and we realize that one of our biggest partnerships is with the communities that we exist in and represent in our region. And so we thought every year we should make an effort to come forward and chat and answer any questions. I'll turn it over to Ms. Kozlovi right now to see if, Donna, if you've got anything you wanted to highlight.
No, actually nothing really major to highlight, but as our chair has said, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to come here. And for those, I look around the room, some of you have been able to participate in the mayor and council chats at our various residences. And in fact, just this morning I saw Councillor Milton Hope at one of ours. I think this is another opportunity for the partnership to get stronger. Okay, because I think it's very important for our residents to have the opportunity to meet council, and for council to listen to what they have to say. So we really appreciate you taking the time to come to our sites too. We have had 2022 was a great year. We came out of COVID. We came out of COVID quite strong. Unfortunately, as an industry, there is still some negativity with seniors housing and long-term care housing because they were hit the hardest. But we were still very strong, and as our chair has indicated, not only are we interested in partnerships, but one of our goals is organizational sustainability. And we're very proud that we are a very sustainable organization. But enough, I will take questions.
And thank you, Ms. Cole. Mr. Chair, just because the board is very proud of some things, I did want to sort of pass on. It's the very last page, and as Ms. Kozlovi alluded to, we came through COVID, and our residents came through COVID much much safer and healthier and happier than many throughout the country. And so in one of our surveys, I just want to highlight the fact that 99% of our lodge residents feel safe and secure in our communities. And that is one thing I want to say is Green Acres has made a real push, and we sort of had some learning through COVID, that our facilities, especially our lodges and our larger apartments, really are and can be communities where people have their friends, their families around them. And so we've changed all of our language to talk about communities rather than facilities, because we really did find that in our facilities, as we used to call them, there is a sense of community, and we need to keep strengthening that and encourage folks to get to know their neighbors and enjoy where they live. So I just wanted to make sure, because the board insists that those figures get out there for the knowledge in our communities. Thank you.
Ms. Kozlovi, are there problem areas in the city right now that you're facing?
What do you mean problem areas?
Are there issues that you're needing to deal with that come up on a regular basis?
Lack of housing for independent seniors. We, in our apartment portfolio, I mean, as you all know, we are building an apartment building right now. The first phase is going to open this summer, but all of our apartments, as soon as we have an opening, we have to get in there, get it clean, get it turned, because we have so many people waiting for that kind of housing. So that's one. The other one that there's a little bit of an issue right now globally, or in this area, is the lack of housing with some sort of care services. Again, as soon as we have an opening in any of our communities where we have HCAs or LPNs, the turnover is very quick. We have to be very, very quick, because there are people out there that need that kind of service.
Thank you. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Chair. Is there anything that you can see as a need? So you've listed your two, lack of housing for independent seniors and lack of housing with some supports. But is there something that you specifically could see the city helping you with, either as advocacy or something in our policies, or, ways of doing things that makes your life miserable?
Where we could really do a partnership is advocacy to the provincial government, because there are some buildings that Green Acres does not own. They are owned by the provincial government, and they're getting aged. Okay, they are getting up there in age. So
renovations or replacement?
A little bit of both, but the needs and the wants and the desires of the seniors of today are different than they were in the 1970s. More and more people, seniors, use mobility devices right from the onset. I mean, our average age is 40. Our average age is 84, not 48. So we do have quite a few people using mobility devices, and when these buildings were built, the washrooms were not made to accommodate walkers.
I expect not even the size of the hallways, because I know having family getting into wheelchairs, if your house does not have wide hallways and wide doorways, doesn't matter if you're trying to get a wheelchair ramp in, because they can't get around their house.
They can't get around their house, and it's like a bumper car. So that's where I think we could, for all of our 7 municipalities, we are really advocating to all 7 municipalities that we have to be together as a team, because one thing that the Green Acres Board and the whole organization truly believes in is a senior is a senior. Everyone advocates for the seniors, whether it's a Lethbridge senior. I know you guys are more interested in Lethbridge, but Lethbridge senior, Pitcher Butte senior, whatever, we advocate for the seniors of this area. So all of our municipalities are...
Comprehensive advocacy with the 7 municipalities, of course, would be much stronger than each of us doing it on its own. The other question I had is, you are one of the largest housing providers in Southern Alberta, and you sort of alluded to it, some of the changes in housing needs that you're seeing. Is there anything else, again, when we're doing zoning and things like that, is there anything that you're seeing that you're like, you could help us speed up this process so much if you guys just got out of this or did this? Or
I think we have to, again, there are some buildings that, yes, we would like to rejig if that's such a word, to make it a little bit more usable, okay, and more desirable. Our hands are a little bit tied on some of them because they're not ours. What we're also seeing is that there are more seniors that are very alone. They need the supports, they need the advocacy, because they don't have a family member or they don't have someone that can help them navigate the system. Navigating the system, even the financial system for seniors, can be very difficult, or if they need home care, very difficult for seniors to be able to understand what's their first step. We find that for families too, but.
Are you thinking then sort of like a senior or healthcare ombudsman or something, that the city would have somebody who kind of concierge services for seniors?
We do. I believe you already have that with the senior service navigators.
Is that working though?
System navigators, that's right. It is working out, but there's only so many of them, and we send quite a few people over to help people out.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, and thank you for that. And I did attend my 15th coffee with a counselor at one of the facilities today, and it was, as they usually are, lots of fun, lots of great questions, and lots of great comments in regards to the staff and the facility, which is really, really, I think, very, very important for us. One of the issues that has been raised, and I may have mentioned this to you previously, but I'd just simply like to perhaps explore a little bit. Some of the residents at some of the individual locations have indicated when they get to an advanced level of care, often they have to move. And there does not appear to be a floor that they move up from floor 1 to floor 2, and now floor 2 is offering a greater level of care. And we're talking about people that effectively need help going to the washroom, eating, and those kinds of things. Is there a strategy in place to, as our super seniors, as I refer to them, as our super seniors age, and we are hoping that they're going to age in place, are there opportunities for them to continue to age in place with greater support services?
First off, thank you again for coming to our sites. And I should have answered Councillor Crowson's question differently, because that's another area where we could have advocacy, because you're absolutely right. In our Pitcher Butte and our Coaldale facilities and our Northside facility, we have every level of care. Independent, then they, then they get their meals and housekeeping, or if they need a little bit more care, then we can have health care services. And in Coaldale and Pitcher Butte, we even have nursing care and dementia care. Person doesn't ever have to move. But we were able to do that because we have a partnership with AHS. So that's where we could perhaps get some, a little bit of assistance advocating to AHS, because they tend to build big buildings of all SL4, right, rather than the various steps. So to answer Councillor Crowson's question, that, yeah, that would be another area that we could perhaps, as a group, as a municipality, advocate to Alberta Health Services, or somewhere where, like where you were today. We could certainly, we just need a partnership with them. We could have healthcare aides in there, and then the people wouldn't have to move on.
Do you have the space and/or the capacity to be able to provide that enhanced level of service?
Yes, most places. The only thing is, it would be the width. We would have to change some of the width of the door, right? Most of them, though, like the larger ones, they're already built that way. So, and years and years ago, we sprinklered all our buildings before it was kind of mandated, I guess, because we had a counselor. He was a counselor, but he was also our board member, who was very, very passionate about, because he used to be a former fire chief. Okay, and yeah, you guys know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so he convinced convinced the Green Acres that yes, we put our own money in, and so all our buildings, all our large buildings were fully sprinklered, and they all are still fully sprinklered, where a lot in the province aren't still. So,
I understand that Councillor Carlson wants to add on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Koslovi, for that answer. And Councillor Middleton Hope for being a year ahead of us.
As always.
As always. We just completed our Green Acres strategic planning session, and some of your thoughts about the level of care and aging in place and just moving along were discussed. And we had quite the wide-ranging discussion about how we could deliver services differently for different. Seniors have changed since in 1960 when Green Acres started, and it was the one lodge, and I think you had 4 to a room with a curtain across it and then a common area. Today, seniors don't want that, and so we have been expanding or changing the way we deliver services. One of the things that we're actually exploring right now, aside from things like garden pods for mother-in-law type suites, if you're familiar with those, to also just modular buildings so that you can ramp them up and ramp them down and change the configuration as needs change. So we're trying to be more forward-thinking. One of the things we did say, one of the questions our facilitator asked our board members was, if you could fire yourself and replace you, who would you be looking for? And several of our board members said 30-year-olds. Most of us on Green Acres boards are either close to 84 or getting there. And one of the exciting things, some of our staff that was there are much younger, and we kept asking them, what are you going to want? What are you going to want? Because we do have to think 30, 50 years into the future to build those. So yes, so if we can get some younger folks on Green Acres, that would be very... yeah.
Oh, no, because they don't have to be elected officials.
We
Because the city used to have 1 elected official and 2 citizens.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. I just wanted to also compliment you on the report, although I did almost have a heart attack. I need to say this, and I took the board chair aside and I said, what is this $10 million in donations that Green Acres makes every year? And he said, well, that's actually $10,000, John. You missed a couple of commas there, and it's generated as a result of staff doing a number of initiatives that then provide funding by way of donation to a number of worthy causes. So I certainly want to compliment you on that, and I appreciate the compressions that Jeff did on my chest while I was going through that process. Yes, thank you.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Kozlovi, for coming forward and bringing the report to us. And also thank you very much for the Coffee with Council events that you do organize for council at your facilities. So I have some bigger picture questions that I'm going to ask, and I have had some conversations with Councillor Carlson over the past couple of days, largely because being new to council, I don't fully understand Green Acres Foundation, what you do, how you work, everything like that. So I am going to ask some of those questions to clarify for myself, as well as clarify for some members of the community. As you know, our tax notices are just coming out. There is a sheet within those tax notices that does explain where our taxes go to, and one of those points on the taxes is the Green Acres Foundation. So some people have been asking me, why am I paying for this? What is Green Acres Foundation? I don't understand, and I don't know why I'm paying for it. So maybe I know it's a big question, but can you perhaps outline for myself and others, help me understand why Green Acres Foundations comes as part of our tax bill?
Okay, I will just tell you very easily. Under the Alberta Housing Act, the Act has given any housing management body, like Green Acres is, that provides lodge accommodations. If we just did apartments, we wouldn't fall under that. But any housing management body in the province who provides lodge accommodations has requisitioning authority to the municipalities that they serve. So it's very similar to the school tax, or school requisition, right? The only difference, it used to be years ago, the local school district used to send in how much the requisition is. Now it's a provincial thing. But here, every taxpayer in Alberta pays to some lodge facility.
So, yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, and appreciate the conversation around this, because it does get confusing sometimes. And you're right, our region, which is basically, it's the boundary of Lethbridge County. And so all the municipalities, the county, the city of Lethbridge, Barrons, Nobleford, Colehurst, Picture Butte, and Coaldale. I hope I didn't miss any or I'm in trouble.
County.
And the county. Every citizen, every property tax payer in that region pays the requisition. It's not just city specific. So it's paid by every property, on every property tax bill in the region, regardless of whether you have a facility in your community or not. We have 4 communities, I believe, Colehurst, the county, Nobleford, and Barrons, that do not have lodges in them. Their citizens still pay the requisition because it's in our region. So I hope that makes some sort of sense, that we all pool, it's very regionalized. And as Donna said, as Ms. Koslovi said, it's very much focused on the seniors in the region, not on the specific municipalities. For example, we've got folks from Coaldale, Lethbridge, Barrons, Nobleford, advocating for funding for our Picture Butte site that is in desperate need of some renovations, replacement, Piami Place, Piami, and it's for the good of the seniors in the region, whether they're in that community or not. So it really is for the benefit of the seniors in the region. I hope that helps add a bit of clarity.
To add, so this is why it costs $2,200 a month is the average cost to house a resident, but the average resident only pays $1,770 because it's the rest of us who make up that extra $450.
Yes, and we also get a $13 a day for low income from the government. Okay. Yeah. That's a large assistance grant. Now, the thing is, what you're saying on your tax bill, you put Green Acres. This is the individual municipality's choice whether or not you want to put it. We have always asked to put our name on the tax because really the council really they're tax collectors, right? So it should be Green Acres, because if you get questions, just tell them to phone Green Acres.
And something interesting to add to that, Calgary, for example, does not. No. They just call it all province. So they've identified on their property tax bill that of every dollar you give, 64% goes to the municipality, and they say, and 70 or 36% province. Phone them. So they've gotten very good at saying no. Call them, and Donna likes those calls.
No, and thank you very much for explaining that, because that was, it was something that it helps me explain it, but also something understanding that this does take in Lethbridge County. There are 7 municipalities that pay into this. This is our certain percentage of it. That helps me understand how this works as well. So I certainly appreciate that. I've asked you this before, but if you could restate, what's the difference between the lodge facilities and the other facilities?
Lodge facility.
What makes a lodge facility?
Okay, a lodge facility, the rent portion is still affordable, but we also provide, they also have to pay for their meals, their housekeeping, weekly housekeeping, 3 meals a day plus snacks, so they get the services. Whereas an apartment, they're just paying the rental portion and the utilities. Oh, sorry, the utilities are also part of the service package too.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now, when we go back talking about what the different kind of services are that we should be advocating for to help you get and help bring to the region as well as the community, what do we currently have vacancies in, and what do you currently see wait lists on?
Okay, wait lists are in our apartment portfolio, and it's in our care facilities. Okay, definitely where we have care, they're always full.
Okay.
Always full. And just, I don't know if you noticed in here, we were kind of the very, very first ones in the province to do this partnership with housing and health, way back in 1999. And now, you go anywhere in the province, they talk about SL3, SL4, SL4D. And we're kind of proud that it started here. Like we thought about this like 20-some years ago. So, but for advocacy, where we have vacancies is in the city lodge, the straight lodge portfolio.
That's where we have vacancies for? Okay. Okay. And then my final question is I didn't see financials in the annual report. Is there a place that we can access the financials or see them? With our other requisitioning bodies, I see them on their websites, but I couldn't locate that on the Green Acres website as well. Is there a
No,
place
we put this on there. This is a financial overview. We used to put on the consolidated, but this is basically what we provide the government, okay? And they are, and we provide them with the consolidated too. So if you want a copy of the consolidated, that's no problems, but you're really not a funder, so it's a little different that we would be asked for someone that's not a funder for our financial statements. And this is why we do the annual report. This, we have no problems. We give this to everybody.
Okay, but I can request that then? Like I can send you an email?
You should go through, I don't know, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I can work through him on that then.
Not to me.
Thank you.
Any other questions from our group? I see none. Thank you very much, Ms. Kozlowy. Appreciate it. I have a resolution from Councillor Carlson. Be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee receive the Green Acres Foundation 2022 report to the community presentation as information.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not much to add. Just appreciate Ms. Kozlowy coming down. It is direction from Green Acres Foundation Board of Directors that the CEO and the chair do these annual visits to our member municipalities just to sort of update folks and answer the questions. And I do always enjoy them because, as I was saying to Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, I've been around here a while. I forget. You don't know what you don't know, but you also forget that I've had this knowledge for 15, 16 years now, and it's always good to refresh our council colleagues how things do work with Green Acres, because we do get the calls when the requisition goes out, and now we know to forward them to Ms. Kozlowy. So with that, I'll just call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? Thank you. Coming up next, Mr. Andrew Malcolm, General Manager, Community and Social Development, about Housing Acceleration Fund and the competitive grant application.
What jacket have you got on today?
Welcome, Mr. Malcolm.
Thank you very much, members of Cultural and Social SPC. So today I'm joined here with Logan Bartholow, and we are seeking your approval to proceed with submitting an application to CMHC's Housing Accelerator Fund with the intent to access between 3.5 and 7.9 million in funding to incentivize the implementation of local actions that remove barriers to housing supply with the intent of growth of units in our community. The purpose of this program from the lens of the federal government and CMHC is to incentivize and push municipalities to make progressive and systemic changes on what they can control or contribute in relation to housing. Yes, this does mean change, which is why we're bringing this to your attention. This is about what is in our control. This effort will connect to the recently approved encampment strategy, which included a housing solutions coordinator position who would lead the effort to increase the supply of housing in our community, which is aligned with this program. I want to acknowledge that we do not require SPC and ultimately Council's approval before making the application, but if successful, we would require a supporting resolution before the final contribution agreement is signed. Administration did feel it important to bring this forward ahead of the application due to the commitments that the city would make in the application regarding growth rates in housing initiatives, which would directly connect back to City Council on terms of how progressive those change we are willing to be. If we had the sense as administration of a desire to be very progressive, we would aim our targets higher, allowing us to ultimately access more money. If we want to be more conservative, we could lower and access less money, or as we have recommended, a middle-of-the-road approach. So with that, I will turn things over to Mr. Bartholow to take you through the details. Thank you.
Can go to the next slide. So this is a slide that was previously included in presentations regarding the Rapid Housing Initiative, and it highlights the hurdles that a housing developer has to overcome when developing a new project. Not only is the pre-development process risky for developers in general, it's especially risky for not-for-profit housing developers that might not have access to a large amount of capital. The boundary in red is where the city can have the most influence and impact by either reducing barriers or providing incentives. Next slide. And next slide again. So within the application, municipalities must commit to an increase in their housing growth rate over and above the forecasted base level. And municipalities must also commit to at least 7 action plan initiatives. The funding program is designed to create systemic and municipally led changes that will benefit housing in both the short and the long term. Next slide. This slide shows a forecast for permitted units in the coming years, with this year being quite low compared to historical levels as a result of economic tightening caused by the high interest rates set by the Bank of Canada. Economists and industry professionals estimate that we should return to average growth levels by 2026. Next slide. With these numbers in mind, the Housing Accelerator Fund applicants must commit to an increase in their forecasted housing growth rates of 10, 15, or 20%. Administration is recommending that the 15% commitment level be supported by council for a potential application. And if 15% is committed to and the city is a successful applicant, it would require the city to facilitate an extra 214 units by the end of 2026. Next slide. Those extra 214 units are what is used to calculate what funding amount the municipality may be eligible for through this program. Next slide. Based on the increased growth rate that the city commits to, there's the potential for grant funding between $3.5 million and $7.9 million. For the 15% level specifically, the city could potentially access between 5.3 and 5.9 million to facilitate those 214 units. Next slide. Funding is released in 4 equal payments, 1 upfront payment, and then yearly payments based on whether a municipality was able to reach their milestones and goals that were committed to for that year, with only the last payment being contingent on whether the committed growth rate was achieved or not. Next slide. Successful applicants can use funds to action the various initiatives that we're committed to, invest directly in affordable housing, or invest in affordable or market rate housing infrastructure. There's also a reminder that investments should be focused on creating systemic changes. Next slide. As mentioned, municipalities must commit to at least 7 action plan initiatives, and CMHC has recommended 25 that municipalities could choose from. Through analysis, we believe that 11 of the 25 initiatives align with both City of Lethbridge plans and strategies, as well as having the most potential to increase our housing supply. Many of these initiatives would require land use bylaw amendments. Next slide. I won't read all of these out, but these are the 11 initiatives that administration is looking for council support on. Next slide. Here's an example of one of those initiatives showing high-level overview of what actions the city could take and the expected outcome. Next slide. And there are a number of risks that we've identified. The first one is just not submitting an application, meaning the city is unable to potentially access between 3.5 and 7.9 million. The second risk is that administration submits an application, but council does not ultimately support the plan approved by CMHC. And the third risk is that the city is successful in receiving funding and enters an agreement with CMHC, but is not able to meet the commitments within the plan. Further detail and mitigation details on these strategies or for these risks have been included in the report for council's consideration. Next slide. In analyzing the CMHC program, as well as other CMHC programs like the Rapid Housing Initiative, administration believes that there is opportunity to align our affordable and social housing capital grant to more strategically align with the goals and initiatives of CMHC and to better take advantage of these opportunities. As such, administration is recommending that we pause intakes for the affordable and social housing capital grant and return to council with amendments to the policy. Next slide. Next slide. And to summarize, if successful, the City of Lethbridge could receive between 3.5 and 7.9 million through the CMHC program, depending on the growth rate that would be committed to. Administration is looking for council support on the growth level commitment of 15%, as well as council support on the 11 action plans that administration is looking to include in the application. Thank you.
Thank you. There are questions. I'll quickly ask one. The biggest stumbling block as we look, all of a sudden, hey, here's some money available. What would you characterize as being the biggest stumbling block that we have in the city? I know historically one of the big ones is of course, the having to rezone. Is that still kind of the big one right now? And do you have, you probably can't even talk about areas that you have in mind, but addressing that, what can you tell me?
I think there are two main ones based on our kind of experience. And the first one is just the financial realities that these groups that are looking to build housing just simply don't have the capital up front to do it. They're reliant on other funding sources, and then it comes down to when is the funding made available. All levels of government want to reduce their amount of risk, and so they would love to pay out once the building is built. That doesn't necessarily help with the individual applicant's cash flow. So that's number one. The second one, and that's why all these different levels of government are getting involved on a funding basis. The second one is zoning. I think our current land use bylaw, as we've, acknowledged, is quite out of date, and it requires changing. Municipalities across North America are being more progressive in their land use bylaw in terms of the types of housing that they're allowing. One example is the City of Toronto just allowed up to 4 units on every property, which previously only allowed 1. So across the whole city, you've just increased the amount of supply 4 times, or the potential for supply 4 times, without having to go through a pretty laborious process. So yeah, I think zoning and the financial realities of these organizations that are looking, many of these organizations that are looking to build the housing.
Is all of this federal money, can only non-for-profits apply for it, or can there be profit groups that say, we have the ability to build here, give me the money and we'll do it?
Thanks for the question. For the Housing Accelerator Fund application, only municipalities or governing bodies that have influence over land use regulations are able to apply for this program. Once the municipality receives that funding, the funding can be used for any type of housing, whether that's market rate or affordable housing. And there are specific things that a municipality can use that funding for to incentivize various types of housing along the entire continuum.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you. I just want a little bit more clarification. So a young couple, for the sake of argument, who want to build a property somewhere, let's take Gary Station, for example, would they be eligible through a process to acquire some of the funding that may be available? Or is this specifically geared towards affordable housing, whatever that may look like, seniors housing, Indigenous housing? So I'm looking at, is there a possibility here for a young couple to access this programming?
Thanks for the question. I think we need to get to that level of detail, but essentially what we would do is we'd put forward those, or 7 of the 11 initiatives proposed, hopefully get the approval for those, and then we would be in a position to develop the initiatives in terms of how we would roll them out. The example that was given around accessory dwelling units or secondary suites, so right now they're fairly limited. So if we made a land use bylaw change to make them permitted or discretionary in more zones, we would be reducing the barriers to that. And then we talked about potentially putting an incentive in place. So you could provide $5,000, $10,000 to incentivize each secondary suite, and that would be something that would be available by any individual in our community looking to build that type of thing. So the incentives don't need to be directly targeted to an affordable housing nonprofit. We can look at things that are more wide-reaching. Again, the end outcome here is more units in the community. It's not necessarily that they're affordable or market. There was one slide in the presentation that alluded to different amounts of money depending on the types of units. So we do get a little bit more money the more affordable units we build, but we can still access quite a significant amount of money even if they were all market built.
Okay. Will there be a process that will be developed and/or will be made available to the public so that my young couple that I'm talking about, who are struggling to get into the market, will be notified of how the process will work, and will we utilize a concierge service to walk them through the process? How will that work?
I think your question I'll take as a comment or some advice, and that would be something that we would look to do. The nice thing is now, since the encampment strategy and the funding approved, we do have a housing solutions coordinator position that will be filled. We would have that person in place to help roll those types of programs out and make sure that they're well known and that the folks that are looking to access them are supported in accessing them.
And we'll create a communication strategy around that.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this. A quick question. I think it was answered, but I want to make sure. This program is only available to municipalities. A seniors housing body in the region couldn't.
You know any?
Asking for a friend.
This specific program is targeted to making changes at a municipal level to allow more housing. So municipalities are the only one with that authority to do that. So this is targeted specifically to municipalities. The outcome and the initiatives that would be funded through this would be available to organizations like Green Acres and others in the community.
Okay, and thank you. And so I'm just trying to scroll. By agreeing to the 15%, it's adding another how many units to our averages, and how do we base that on? Is it based on historical growth, and we're saying we'll go beyond that, or do we submit the numbers, and this would be a good year to submit the numbers because it was so low?
For the question, when municipalities apply, they will have to supply historical numbers from 2018 to now, and then also have to forecast numbers for 2024, 2025, and 2026. So those numbers, it is a little bit like looking into a crystal ball, especially in these uncertain economic times. So these numbers are informed, but obviously we're not able to specifically control the number of units that are built next year or the years prior. What we did try to do is look at, especially Bank of Canada rates, if they follow a trend that economicists are expecting, then economists, there we go, are expecting, then basing that on historical levels when those rates were at a similar level, that's sort of how we got the numbers that we got. We've talked to development experts in the industry as well as build, and while again they said that it is difficult to forecast these numbers, the data that we use to inform these numbers was well informed and is on trend with what they're expecting.
Thank you. And is it permits drawn? Is it units in progress, or is it units completed?
It is permitted units. So they don't have to be constructed, just permitted. So they're looking for building permit data. Every year or municipalities, if they're successful, will have to provide an annual report. And within that, they'll have to include the permitted units that were permitted for that year.
So I'm just trying to wrap my brain around this. If we look through our municipal housing strategy, and we look at all the gaps that we've identified in that, and we sort of identify those, say one of them was, and I'm only saying this because we just had a presentation from one of our senior housing providers, and we know that seniors apartments are at a premium right now. They are full. Could one seniors, Green Acres Foundation just is opening phase 1 of their new Abbey Road Terrace, 15 units. Second phase, another 15 units. There's 25 units. If a housing provider had another parcel of land already purchased, ready to go, that could provide all of these extra units above and beyond, is that something we'd be looking at, or is it more to give everyone, every young couple, every person that comes forward, here's 10 grand, here's 10 grand, or is it better to focus it all in one large?
Thanks for the question. The program requires that a municipality commit to at least 7 initiatives. And through those initiatives, each initiative will be specific to one demographic or one initiative or one action. But by committing to multiple initiatives, it makes a municipality have to look at multiple different areas of housing. So, for example, there's partnering with not-for-profit housing providers to preserve and increase the stock of affordable housing. That could be one initiative like you mentioned. But then the accessory dwelling unit would be targeted to potentially a different demographic. And by taking a wide approach of all housing, that would likely improve the success of municipalities.
And thank you. Final question on that then. So when we submit 11, is that what we're submitting? We have to submit 7, but I thought we had said yes to 11.
We're looking for support on the 11. Municipalities have to include at least 7, but can include more. Okay. Of these 11, through analysis, as we continue to work through this, there's the potential that there might be 1 or 2 that we realize won't actually work within our context. And so what we're looking for is support on these 11, knowing that we'll have to submit at least 7, and if we need to remove some, we might.
Because that was going to be my question. If we submit 11, do we have to show improvement on all 11? So would it mean better to say we'll go with these 7 that we know we can show improvement on?
Applicants, if they're successful, will have to report on all of the initiatives that they commit to. So if council wants to be more strategic and pointed, we could entertain that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Croson.
Thank you. I had some of the same questions that were just asked about that. But I like to stack opportunities. I like to, whenever we can, solve more than one problem at a time. So the Green Acres one was certainly one of my ideas there as well. But yesterday we also had the presentation from Opportunity Lethbridge, and Lethbridge Land at this time doesn't do infills, which is a huge need. Do we see at looking at those opportunities across the corporation, across your department, where we might be able to solve more than one problem at a time if we move forward on something like this?
Yeah, so we've been in preparation of this presentation and an application. We've been working with our planning and development, or planning and design department, as well as Opportunity Lethbridge very closely, as well as our finance. Those are the types of opportunities that we'd love for this to be kind of a springboard for us into that space. You can utilize this funding for land banking for the purposes of housing. You can also use it for putting in appropriate infrastructure to bring an infill site up to current standards, which is often a barrier for infill development. And if we look specifically at affordable housing, they're often looking at infill situations just to be closer to transit, central communities, and the downtown. So that's kind of where these things stack up, is that you have groups looking at infill situations. They're typically up against a rezoning, and they're typically up against old infrastructure, and they're trying to navigate all of these barriers, and that's where this type of a program could help reduce some of those barriers and hopefully make them more successful.
One of the things you're asking for is that we hold off on the grant program until the policy is redeveloped. Is there anybody in the queue? I know we have given money out to a couple of groups, not as much as some of them wanted, i.e. Ms. Kozlovi, but we gave them. But is there anybody in the queue? Is there anybody that would be endangering any projects if we take some time to redevelop that policy?
We have no current applications. We've been fielding some inquiries from groups that are interested, but at this point in time, no applications. This would give us a time to, again, we're still waiting. I guess we're fully allocated on those funds. The last approval had to dip into the additional CIP funds, and we are expecting the announcement on the rapid housing allocations by the end of June. So all of these things coming together is we're not expecting all 3 of those rapid housing projects to be approved. So there would be a return of some funds through that, and then if we could put those on top of these funds, we would, and then bring forward a more strategic approach, we would have a larger bucket of money being hopefully distributed in our community in a more strategic way.
I recently attended, actually a couple of weeks ago now, the group that is the municipal councillors group that works with CUDA, the transit group. And I was surprised that most of our presentation at CUDA was on their housing initiatives. They're looking very strongly at doing housing advocacy because they see that thing about transit and housing going together, and they're trying to upskill planning departments about transit and transit about planning departments. Have you looked at that? Is there any opportunity that we can connect with some of our transit locations in this project to get the best bang for our buck?
I don't want to speak on behalf of our planning department, but I look at a municipal development plan which talks about increased densities along transit corridors. Then we have a new transit plan that has some specific corridors that have higher frequency. And now we're going to be looking at a land use bylaw. So as they look at land use bylaw and contemplate maybe zones or areas of our city that would be more allowable, permitted for denser situations, that's where these things start to layer in. And again, what we wanted to draw attention to with this specific opportunity is that when that land use bylaw amendment comes forward to council, in the back of your minds is that if you approve or allow more housing to be permitted, it means that we will likely be in a better position to get to delivering units in alignment with our targets in this type of plan, which is the purpose of the CMHC group, is to try to get municipalities moving in that direction quicker.
We have all those things in. The last thing, when you're looking at risk, the one risk I didn't see you outline, but is a risk for everything, is NIMBYism, right? This is a change. In California, we have been seeing some fabulous work with YIMBY. Like there's been some major change, and we've seen some of that work coming through the Edmonton stuff. As part of your communication plan, as part of this, what role is that YIMBY going to be? Trying to convince people that there is something for everybody in this. This is good for the city, it's good for the community, good, but you got something out of it too. What are we doing in that avenue?
I think the conversations that we've had so far is that we didn't see a YIMBY effort necessarily as its own initiative because we just didn't see if it would deliver specific tangible units. But we did see that as a conversation that would probably underlie each of the this whole kind of initiative process. And now again that we have some people in positions that can help really take this as their sole responsibility, I think we would expect that there'd be some level of that. I think that the challenge is again, some further reading is that a YIMBY approach typically then puts someone against somebody. And we want to just, again, bring as much good information forward through all these different initiatives, if successful, to again, increase housing in the community and trying to make it known that it's not as scary as some might make it out to be.
We renters are not evil people? Yes. Okay, so you have a plan, even if it's not YIMBY specifically. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much. And I see as one of your example initiatives, or the example initiative, is encouraging accessory dwelling units. So certainly I'm interested in that in particular. We've done some work and we've had some chats with Build on that. If we looked at putting this forward, would this certainly lead us down the road of building an inventory of eligible properties within the city, within current developed areas, as well as new to be developed areas?
I think that's a real possibility. I think now, again, that we have resources, but also that in report, if we were successful with this, there's some pretty specific reporting requirements, and therefore we would need to have baseline data to be able to accurately report on meeting our targets or hopefully exceeding them. So I think that's something that we would hope would come along with something like this.
Because there is a nationwide database with different municipalities in them that have those specific spaces. So it would be great to see that for Lethbridge, particularly for the ADUs and particularly because we have a builder here that specializes in them. Thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you. Just two questions. Does this, the funding that is available, would it be for new builds only, or would there be an opportunity to leverage capital for renovations?
Thanks for the question. I believe, as of right now, there are some limited details that CMHC has released in regards to whether renovations would be considered as part of new units. If they had to apply for a building permit, they would be captured within a new build for this year. Whether CMHC would view that as an entirely new unit that we could count to the increase, that's something that, as administration, we would have to look into a little bit further.
I'm just thinking about the, the development of a mother-in-law suite or something of that nature on the property.
Just specific to that example, I think those ones would be, that's at a new unit, so those ones would definitely count in this regard. I think the ones that are a little bit more vague is if there is a building that's been sitting vacant for, say, 5 years and used to be used for some sort of housing unit, and now they want to upgrade it to bring it back into the housing stock. Does CMHC see that as a new unit build or not? That's the piece that we're uncertain on right now.
Okay, and we'll find that out, I presume, in time. Second question is in regards to residential only versus some of the properties that we've just approved over in Copperwood that have the up and downs. So we have commercial down below, we have residential up above. Would they be subject to this funding?
Thanks for the question. Any new residential, whether it would be a single-family home or an apartment above a commercial floor, would be considered as an additional unit.
And would that include the commercial premise down below?
I don't believe it would. These numbers are specifically to residential builds. So the units within, the residential units within that development would be included. The commercial developments would not be.
If I could just add to that, I think where we would, again, the details of what our initiatives and what we're going to put our funding out to have yet to be determined. If we put in an infrastructure upgrade and someone was going to build that type of development and they needed a larger pipe into the building, that larger pipe could be funded in theory through this project for the entirety of the development, even though it might only be 4 residential units above 4 commercial bays. If we had an accessory dwelling unit or some sort of program that was specific to per dwelling unit incentive, then those commercial units would not be able to access that. So it depends, I think, on how we roll it out, but something like land and infrastructure is probably harder to split out, and therefore would be something that would be looked at as being beneficial to the commercial component as well, whereas an initiative or something that was specific to a unit would be more specific to residential only.
Okay, good. It's an exciting proposal, and if we're able to capture some capital as a result of this, I think it'll certainly help the housing industry. So thank you for that.
Councillor Carlson.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple questions. In the 11 proposed action plan initiatives, would any of those give us any forward movement on maybe tiny home developments? I was trying to see one that, because it's something we've talked about a long time, is we've always had trailer parks, but now tiny homes are a different kettle of fish. But I couldn't find where you could shoehorn that into any of those. And that's purely my bias, as I'd like us to go down and explore those paths. Is that available in any of those, or did I just miss it?
Yeah, I think number 3, so promoting infill developments with increased housing density. If you took 2 standard houses and put 8 tiny homes.
But that's infill. I'm talking a brand new development. Say we were going out and we owned a big.
So I think the big thing is that these are high level ideas. Then there will be a subset of individual initiatives that will fall underneath. So to promote infill developments with increased housing density, we're going to have a conversation around the land use bylaws that are current, or the rules and regulations in the land use bylaw that are currently prohibitive to that. That might be wide ranging. council might decide to put that in place for new developments as well as infill developments through that process. These ones are again, really high level. It's the sub-initiatives or the details that we would be building in the next, well, the application we're expecting to be in June. So the next couple of weeks would be where we kind of point out some of that in more detail.
Okay. Thank you for that. Mr. Chair, if I can, because I'm just unsure of what exactly we're doing with these 11 that admin has proposed. Or do you want us to explore all 11 right now so you have some idea of where council wants to go? Or is it just you're going to do that work and hope council buys in later? I'm just not, because I have a lot of questions on the various initiatives, but I don't know if that's my job or not.
So
It's never stopped me, but I'm trying to behave.
I guess how we were thinking of this is if we brought forward 7 and you didn't like one, then we would be already behind the 8 ball, having to bring you back another one in order to make the application. So we saw 11, that aligned with CMHC's recommendations as well as aligned with what we already have within our municipal development plan and municipal housing strategy. So we feel that because we're already in alignment with 2 approved documents, that these could move forward, and we would look to pick the best 7 to put forward into an application. And if that was 8, then we would put in 8, and then they were going to move forward with that. But by bringing forward 11, if there was one of these or 2 of these or 3 of these that really jumped off the page that gave an SPC member or a council member heartburn, at this point in time before we go down that path, we could remove that now and just remove it from the conversation.
All right then, Mr. Chair, this might take some time. I'm sorry. Well, no, I don't have heartburn. There's 7 that I can immediately go, yep, I understand it, and I can thumbs up. There are 4 that I may just not understand at all, or not be clear of how we're going to do them. Let's jump out with the first one of mine. Number 2, enable mixed-use redevelopment of city-owned properties where appropriate, maintaining the current government use. So is that like my April Fool's joke that I did 20 years ago, condos on top of City Hall?
Not too far off.
Okay.
What we're seeing in other municipalities is mixed-use developments like affordable housing, supportive housing above a fire hall. So those would be things that we need to do more exploration on. But it's something that, again, when we see these uses that take up quite a bit of land on a typically single-story development like a fire hall, there are opportunities to look at increasing your density and capturing that land value and building up.
I like it, but I don't think it's doable in 4 years, so it's not one that I would hang my hat on and say, yes, CMHC, we're going to achieve this, because unless you... Okay. We may have a winner. All right, then. Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. Heartburn gone. The next one was number 7. Promoting higher density development without the need for rezoning. Just explain through that. Is that change to our land use bylaw to make everything permissible or permittable?
Again, the intent here is to make large progressive systemic changes. And so what that would be doing is that, it could be something as simple as allowing a secondary suite on all developments. That would be higher density development without rezoning. It also could be to say that on all currently zoned, let's say R100, you're allowed to build any size as opposed to capping it. There's those different types of considerations, but this is all about making a change at a land use bylaw level that then allows a certain number of different things that are currently not allowed without rezoning to go ahead simply through a development permit process.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think I've already answered my own question on one. Well, help me with missing middle. I still can't remember what that means.
Missing middle is basically anything beyond a single-family home to an apartment building, and that's where a lot of municipalities have focused their attention on. It's the secondary suites, the accessory dwelling units, the granny suites, duplexes and triplexes. we have, again, across North America, there's a lot of our city that is zoned for only one house, and that's a way to sensitively increase density across communities, and that's something that has just drawn a lot of attention in the last few years.
Is that something we'd have to change, or is that not something we already allow for in different areas? Like, I'm just wondering how, if we are doing it already, how do we do better?
If we just looked at something like secondary suites or duplexes, I know City Council had just went through a rezoning for a duplex and an infill situation. So if you changed your land use bylaw and allowed those processes to be permitted, that individual, that developer, that group would have not have had to go through that process, and I think ultimately got denied. Those types of situations would have, in theory, move from idea to developed unit quicker.
Thank you. And the last one I have, Mr. Chair, if you forgive me, is number 10. I don't think affordable housing as of right. Can you explain that to me? And where I'm thinking, like, I get it if the city owns a property, say we own something downtown that's a parking lot, if that's disposed of as right, it can be affordable housing. I get that. I think that's what it means. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what if the city is a land developer that owns 50 hectares? Does that also mean that if we decide, if somebody comes in, another developer, and says, we'll take that off your hands, is it automatically fall into that? I couldn't wrap my brain around that.
I think this is about, similar to conversations we've had about land banking, and that if we had land, whether that's in an infill situation, which Councillor Crowson alluded to we don't do very often, or in a new development area, that the city might rezone or hopefully have by right through larger land use bylaw changes, land that could be utilized for development of housing, and that we would then transfer that land to a housing developer to harness that ability. So again, this is more targeted to cities that have a large land bank and are sitting on land, and they can, like City of Calgary is often giving land away for $1 to develop affordable housing. Our land bank is a little bit more finite, but we still do have some opportunities. So that would be what that is about removing the rezoning criteria on the front end so that whoever gets the land doesn't have to go through the rezoning.
So, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. So following that, say we're the developer in a certain neighborhood. Traditionally, or in past, we have donated or at cost to Habitat for Humanity. So this would say that if we donate it to them, we've developed a process. They don't have to come for rezoning if they want to do an 8-plex or a 4-plex or whatever it may be. It's already enshrined there that if we do that, it's already done and we don't have to go through that process that takes time and money.
I don't think we would say that you don't have to go through that process. We would lead that process so that when they took the property, that headache was already done. Or again, preemptively, we work on the land use bylaw on specific land and locations, especially in new developing areas where we're the developer. We could potentially allocate and pre-zone on the front end lands that are, the intended purpose is to distribute to the community for the building of affordable housing. And just with that, like, that's not going to happen within 4 years. And that's why we have to create a mix of systemic changes that check their box in alignment with at least 7 of these, whereas some initiatives will be very targeted to getting a per unit increase to meet our goals. So it's going to be a little bit of a mix and match, which is why, again, we brought forward 11, is because as we dive into it, when we can actually see the application form, which we can't see today, we would be doing our best to put forth the initiatives that set us up to meet those growth targets.
Okay, and my final question, and then I will shut up, I promise. Number 11, promoting and allowing more housing types that serve vulnerable populations. Is there a housing type that serves a vulnerable population that we do not allow right now? Because that's, I couldn't think of one, and so I was just, that'd be hard to, if we already do it, it'd be hard to increase it.
The best example would be our supportive housing definition in the land use bylaw. Currently has a cap on it. I think it's 21 units. So basically, and that's only allowed within I think it's just within the downtown commercial district. So right now, if you wanted to build a supportive housing unit above 21 units, I'm not sure if I don't want to say there's no opportunities because I'm not fully up on speed, but there are very limited opportunities. And even with a supportive housing of less than 21, we only have very few opportunities in our community. So it would be about, again, either maybe a combination of expanding the definition or making the definition more open, and the land that definition actually is permitted or discretionary on, more opportunities within our community.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've used my words for the day.
Just for my own clarification and process, if this is approved today with this committee, it'll go before council again. Well, at that point, I guess in 2 weeks, next week or 2 weeks. Anyway, whenever it comes before council, will you have kind of refined the 11 suggestions, or is this kind of what you're going with right now today?
What we get in front of you today is what will go to council. Now, behind the scenes, we may have refined things a little bit further and could, I think, provide a verbal update to where we're at. We're still trying to hit an undefined application date that we just know is going to come in June. Right. So that's kind of what we're working towards. But I think for the purposes of the council meeting, it would be as presented here today. Just so as it is right now, like there are this money is available across the country. Is everybody in the same boat as we are in terms of timelines that they won't know and we won't know until they know? Everyone's in the same boat. I do know that FCM has put forward ask to the CMHC to extend the deadlines because they feel like the timelines were very short for municipalities. Large municipalities like Calgary and Edmonton, they have a team of 25, 30 people dedicated to doing this type of work. The mid-size and smaller municipalities like Lethbridge, we don't have those people in place, and so it really pulls on all departments to try to put something like this together on such a short timeline. I'm going to look to see when we found out about this. April? About mid-April we found out about this opportunity, and so to get to a June deliverable is definitely a stretch. And just on that, like the rapid housing money that's we're hoping to hear from, has anyone across Canada heard of the results of those applications yet that you're aware of? With the rapid housing, there were two streams. There was a city stream, which was for larger municipalities, and they've started to make those announcements. The project stream, which is the stream that we applied through, nobody has heard, and there's an announcement date we believe to be at the end of June. Good. Thank you. Councillor Crowson.
I know this is probably way too early for this, but what if, we have to backstop this with 1.5 million out of reserves, correct? If we move ahead on this, in case we don't make the 15% and in case we don't do this. First, Finance is aware and has approved where you're planning to take the money from. You haven't, like, you know, Mr. Matthews isn't going to sit here on the city council meeting and go, what?
Thanks for the question. We have involved the city treasurer in our discussions, and he is aware, and this 1.5 million backstop recommendation came directly from him.
The other thing, and I know you probably don't have the answer to this, but I'm thinking nefariously here. If we get to if we do this, we get to 2025, we're 50 things short, can we just make Lethbridge Land, because it's our own department, just say build the 50 so we get the money? Like, is that doable within this program?
I think the quick answer is yes, assuming that what they build and what they access aligns with the initiatives that we've put the money behind. We've had that conversation when we were debating whether we should go with a 10, 15, or 20% growth target, knowing that we do have a land department, so we can directly influence a lot of this potentially. Needless to say, we still went with the 15 just because the market uncertainty is certainly something that is weighing on everyone's minds.
That should be written down somewhere secretly, not secretly, but because it might be a completely different council going, there's another backstop you should be aware of.
And just, if I may, in terms of backstopping, a conversation that we did have is that we anticipate, a lot of this is land use bylaw related. So we anticipate if we were successful, a lot of what we do is actually already funded through taxation, through the operating budget, and we could essentially pay down some of that without the use of taxation dollars through this program. And similarly, the Housing Solutions Coordinator, we feel could be potentially aligned with one of the initiatives and therefore freeing up allocated taxation dollars that can be more flexibly spent. So there's a direct housing input here, but there's also potentially some trickle down things that could be considered a backstop if we're reducing the taxation costs on some already approved initiatives.
So you've thought of some other risk mitigation factors, depending on how this goes, which is great to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? I see none. No.
Sorry, I know I said I'd shut up, but I guess I just want to ask, do you folks have what you need? You're trying to get some idea of the 11? Where do we go from here? Or are you just going to submit all 11 or take it to council? And I'm just not sure what you needed from us exactly today.
What we need today is what is in the recommendation, which would be supportive of all 11. If there's something that is really jumping off the page again that the SPC would like to recommend we take out, that would be advice that we would definitely take and make that revision. But if not, it would be as taking this forward as all 11 is being approved by the SPC and council, and then administration, we will do our best to make sure that the best 7 get put forward into the application. And again, we can put in more than 7, and then what happens is CMHC evaluates, and they'll evaluate the top 7 from their lens. And so it's just a matter of whether we want to leave it up to them or do we just decide what our 7 is that we're going to put forward.
I guess I was really uncomfortable with one of them, but when my colleagues yelled out transit hub or terminal,
Park and ride.
Park and ride, that kind of helped as a possibility, but I still have a little heartburn about that one, only because maybe I'm just not alive to the opportunities and possibilities.
My feeling on that one would be something that falls more into the long-range systemic change. And so if we had I'm just spitballing here, if we had a policy or something in place that said that's a direction we were going to move in, that would likely suffice in checking that box as opposed to having it built, constructed, and units resulting from it. That being said, that one is easy enough to strike. And then I would just suggest that maybe the recommendation read 10 and specifically says withdraw that one so that we don't have to go back and resubmit for the council.
If it's only me with that, and if my colleagues on the committee and the ones that have sat in don't have heartburn with any of them, I'm not ready to pull any of them out of there right now.
I think this is just recommendations. This is, and we leave it to your expertise, I think, to fine tune if need be. So I'm personally, I'm comfortable with the 11 recommendations right now. Any other questions? If not, I will read the resolution. This is.
Why are they staring at me?
I thought you guys were sidebar and we're going to say I hate number 6. I hate number.
No, we were talking when I'm doing a tour tonight.
And how about that hockey game tonight, huh? What about those Blue Jays? Are they playing tonight? Thanks for coming. Anyway, I'll read the resolution. This is from Councillor Carlson, if that's okay. Be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council direct administration to apply for the Housing Accelerator Fund, support the recommended housing supply growth rate commitment of 15% and the 11 action plan initiatives presented on page 7 of the report to include in the City of Lethbridge's Housing Accelerator Fund grant application. Commit the allocation of $1.5 million from the funding held in reserve as matching funds for future projects from the 2022 to 2031 Capital Improvement Program adopted at the June 1st, 2021 meeting of council as a backstop to manage risk if the city is unable to meet the requirements of the action plan, and direct administration to pause intakes for the Affordable and Social Housing Capital Grant and return to the Social and Cultural Standing Policy Committee before the end of Q4 2023 with strategic amendments to Policy CC 49, Affordable and Social Housing Capital Project Grant. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am in support of this. I appreciate the work on such a short turnaround being done and the explanation given to committee. I think this will provide for a lot of positive, if we're successful, and especially successful in meeting those election or action plan initiatives, it'll be positive success stories in our community. I do appreciate that administration identified some of the risks for committee and our colleagues on council, but I also appreciate that they've done some good thinking about how to mitigate those risks. So I would ask for my colleagues' support.
Question's been called. All in favor? Nope, done. All right. Before he starts talking again. And we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.